Classic cars are definitively cool, and they can be a lot of fun too. Hopefully the 3 red flags to watch out for as I'm outlining in this video will help you maximize your fun and minimize the drama when you buy a classic car. Hello folks, my name is Casey and welcome back to the channel. Personally, I'm creeping up on 30 years of classic car ownership, and in that time, no joke, I've owned well over 100 classic cars and motorcycles. I'm not claiming to be any kind of an expert here, but I've certainly purchased my fair share of lemons. Mix in several years of building and restoring classics professionally, and I've definitely learned a few red flags that you can look out for on your next classic car purchase. And stay tuned to the end of the video where I'm going to share one of the most crucial things that I've learned when considering a new to me classic car purchase. So without further ado, let's get into it. Number 1. My first red flag when I'm looking at a classic car for sale is undercoating, specifically relatively fresh undercoating. Now, I understand that in some parts of the country, undercoating can be applied as a rust preventative measure. But what I've personally found to be true is that more often than not, if undercoating has been applied, then it was applied to either mask damage or to cover up improper repairs. This was the case of this Mustang here. The seller downright lied. They said they had scraped the undercoat off, inspected the floors, found them to be flawless, and then reapplied the undercoat as is customary to do where the car had been for sale. And I fell for it. The fact of the matter is that even in the Rust Belt, most classics are fair weather vehicles. So the reasons to apply undercoating to a classic car are pretty well minimalized. And except for rare cases where such coatings may have been factory applied and are therefore concourse correct, it's just a big red flag for me personally. Now, I'm not saying that undercoating should be a no-go for your prospective purchase, but its presence demands a much closer inspection of the vehicle. Number 2. My second red flag when buying a classic car is when work has reportedly been done to the vehicle, but the seller cannot produce any receipts or other such records of that work, or even individual parts that were supposedly installed. Now, let's take one of the most common ones, the claim of a rebuilt engine. Believe me, I can appreciate how a cherry-looking engine under the hood can get your heart racing when you're looking at a car. And a smart seller would have definitely freshened up a good running motor. There's literally nothing wrong with a Krylon rebuild. A great seller can make the motor look brand new. But believe me, there are plenty of unscrupulous sellers out there who would actually try to pass off one of those Krylon rebuilds as a fresh motor. The motor in my Mustang was one of those. And another more passive version of this claim is when a seller will say that the previous owner told them that the engine was rebuilt, but they're the ones who didn't have the receipt, right? I've seen that so many times, it's not even funny. That claim always cracks me up. It's certainly suspect when it was the previous owner that installed the rebuilt motor, but the thing looks like as fresh as can be and the guy's owned it for 2 years. So what's the moral of the story here? Don't let a seller's claims that the engine or any other major parts or supposed repairs that are fresh affect the price that you're willing to pay for the vehicle without proof. Or at the very least, use this lack of documentation as an excuse to examine those areas of the vehicle much more closely. You can demand a compression check be done. You can check out the components of the inside of an engine or transmission with a bore scope inspection. You can even get a used oil analysis if you have time to wait for one. Red flags are just that, a warning that something is amiss. Number 3. Now, my third red flag is going to ruffle some feathers for sure, because my third red flag is fresh paint. Now look, a paint job is the single most expensive aspect of a car build. And if you're spending done car money on a done car, then you need to make sure that the car was done right? Now, there are a couple of different ways to look at a freshly painted car for sale. In the example of the Mustang that I've been building for my customer, the owner is actually the one who had the car painted. And it's an all right paint job. Now in this instance, and to be fair, the owner was misled by the guy who had worked on the car previously, but the car just wasn't ready for paint. And it still really bothers me that the body shop that painted it didn't bring this to the owner's attention before they took his money and sprayed the car. Regardless, the fact that the car was painted just made all the rust repair and chassis work that still needed to be done that much more of a time-consuming and expensive process. So that's certainly something to consider if we're talking about a car that you are considering purchasing. Now, in the example of my own Mustang here, the paint job is actually pretty nice, but it definitely masked some of the work that had been done poorly. The bottom line is this: if the car is freshly painted, there should be some sort of documentation. If there isn't, then it probably wasn't the best work. If there are receipts, do some research on the shop that painted the car. What kind of work quality are they known for? Did they take the car down to metal? Did they do any rust repair? Regardless of whether or not you're looking at a freshly painted car or a car with an older paint job, you should probably consider getting a paint thickness gauge. They're like a little magnet pen that you can stick on the paint to see how thick it is or if there's any Bondo. There are several different inexpensive versions of these from like $15 up to $50. And I'll put an associate link for Amazon down in the description to a couple of different models. Having a paint thickness gauge and testing all of the problem areas like the corners of fenders, doors, quarters, or even the rocker panels down below would be a good practice for sure. So those are my 3 red flags to look out for when you're going to purchase a classic car. And so this leads me to my final piece of advice for your prospective classic car purchase, and that is to be honest with yourself. Classic cars can be purchased in a huge variety of conditions, from a rusted out Hulk that's good for little more than its serial number to $1 million plus Barrett-Jackson masterpiece. Before you decide what's right for you, you need to ask yourself a few questions. First, who's going to work on the car? If that's you, right on. You're my kind of person. If it's going to be somebody else, that's cool too, but just know that labor is really, really expensive, like up to $100 to $200 an hour. And builds can take anywhere from hundreds of hours up to 1,000 hours or more. When I was just a kid terrorizing my high school parking lot in my 1965 Mustang, we used to joke that everything for a classic cost $200. I think I made $425 an hour back then, so that was a lot of money. But nowadays, everything is $1,000, and nothing kills your joy faster than dragging home a new project and not really being able to afford to actually fix it up. And if you're in the work on it yourself camp, then the second thing you need to be honest with yourself about is your ability to actually do the work. Now, I learned everything I know by doing it, and I'm generally a pretty big advocate of that. But I also bit off more than I could chew more than a few times, and there have been quite a few projects I just couldn't finish because I went too far and my skills just weren't there yet. So don't be afraid to start small, right? Try to make a realistic budget for yourself. Maybe take the hood off and paint it before you start stripping the whole car down to bare metal, that kind of stuff. Anyway, I'm trying to keep these videos short and sweet, so I think that's where we're going to call this one. I do sincerely wish you the best of luck on your classic car purchase, and don't be afraid to hit me up in the comments and ask me any questions that you might have. I hope you found this information helpful. I put Buy Me a Coffee link in the descriptions of all my videos if you feel like supporting what I'm doing here directly. Buying a paint thickness gauge from my associates link in the description will also put a couple of bucks in my pocket. Sharing my videos with your network is also hugely helpful, as is watching another video after the credits roll in this one. So thank you so much for your support, and we'll see you on the next one.